very special guest today is Lee Child. Hi, Lee.
Hi.
You are the #1 New York Times best-selling author today. Oh, that's amazing.
It feels pretty good.
I was going to say, how does it feel? I mean,
it's a strange thing, really, because I don't think writers are particularly competitive. You know, this is not athletics, it's not the Olympic Games, but
Right.
we are kind of, in a sense, forced into it because everything is listed. You know, there are lists all over the place, and so given that you're in it, you might as well win it. And so you feel like the ambition is to be #1, and it takes a lot of time to get there. And then when you do make it, it feels really good.
did you ever feel that you would be a New York Times best-selling author?
Did I seriously think I would? That's a very unrealistic goal, because you start out as one of 100,000 debut novelists, and obviously you hope, to a certain extent maybe you even plan, but to expect to get there realistically, no, it's a dream really, and it's something that it doesn't really occur to you at the beginning because it's so remote.
Yes. Well, your 12th book, I believe, has just been released, and it's called Nothing to Lose. Tell us a little bit about what that story is all about.
It's a kind of more allegorical novel than I usually attempt. There are 2 towns in eastern Colorado invented. I made them up. One is called Hope, and the other is called Despair. And they are kind of typical of those lonely western towns, and the journey is between hope and despair in various ways for Reacher, and there's all kinds of things going on. It's a very high-paced action-adventure novel, but there are some serious issues in it too.
Hope and despair, is that sort of a metaphor for our own lives or his own life?
Not so much his own life, but the lives that people out there are living. Some of them are still full of hope, some of them have been forced into despair by circumstances beyond their control. And so, yeah, it's a very metaphorical book. Reacher himself is a kind of metaphor for the desire to be free, uncommitted, and wandering, liberated. He's a great character, I think, but he's also a rather sketchily drawn character, because I like to leave enough space for him to be a mirror, so that the reader can project their own hopes and desires into the character.
How did you come up with Reacher? He's in all your books.
Yeah, he's the repeating character, the only repeating character in all of the 12 books. And, people ask me, how did I invent him? And really, the honest answer is I didn't invent him. He's a character that has always been there. Every 100 years or so, there's a new version of him that stretches all the way back into prehistory, really. He's been called different things at different times. Knight Errant, the Pale Rider, Robin Hood, Shogun warrior. He's that typical archetypal noble loner who shows up in the nick of time to do good and then disappear. And it's a character that humans have invented over and over again at different stages in history. So there must be some deep desire for a person like that.
Now, your books appeal to both women and men. And I think that many thrillers are sort of boy books. How do you appeal to the feminine side?
Well, that's a great question, because on the face of it, these would be called boys' books. Reacher is a rough, tough, dirty barbarian, basically. Why does he appeal to women? I think for a bunch of reasons. One is that women, especially more than men, in my personal experience, are more offended by injustice. And these are tales of injustice being put right. And I think that's very appealing to women. It's emotionally satisfying. Also, Reacher likes women himself. He likes them, respects them, and treats them as absolute equals. And the women characters in the books are all strong, capable women. There are no decorative bimbos in my books. And I think women enjoy reading about real women rather than, some male thriller writer's idea of women.
Right.
So
absolutely.
I think that makes him acceptable to women, that he is on their side.
Well, certainly I feel I certainly have enjoyed reading about Reacher, or reading the Reacher character. your first novel, your very first novel, was Killing Floor, and it won awards for Best First Mystery, and you also have 5, I think, out of the 12 novels are already on the New York Times list.
Yeah, I think, and you know, the older ones keep popping up now and then. Every time they, you know, they repackage them or they redistribute them or something, they pop back up on the list. So yeah, you know, that's the great thing about being an author. It takes you a long time to get to the top, but by that point you have a long backlist that then will, you know, just keep going forever. That first book you mentioned, Killing Floor, I remember writing it very well. I wrote it in pencil, on paper.
In pencil?
On my dining room table. And, you know, that's been selling now 11 years all around the world, still going strong, and, you know, that's terrific.
Ooh, let's talk about your publishing journey. How long did it take you to sell Killing Floor? How did you go about trying to find a publisher and an agent?
Well, I'm the untypical case, and nobody should despair if they don't do what I did. I was very lucky. I wrote it pretty fast because I was out of work and broke. It took 5 months to write the book, and then I sent it to an agent. I carefully selected an agent, you know, from all the various listing services and information that you can find. He took it on immediately, and it sold to the first publisher that saw it. So,
wow.
But you know, which is lucky. I'm on the lucky end of the process.
Yes,
so it was relatively fast and painless.
Do you think that your background as a television producer has helped either your career as a writer, the process of writing? Has that helped you in writing novels?
I think in detail, no, because they're two very different media. But at a more distant perspective, absolutely, because when you work in television, you quickly learn this is not about you, it's not about your friends, it's not about your peers, you're not trying to impress anybody except the audience. It's about you're in service of the audience. The audience comes first, second, and third. And when that is imprinted on your DNA, after, you know, I spent nearly 20 years in television, I thoroughly understood that, and it was completely instinctive to me to think about the audience first. And so if you're writing for the audience, you stand a much better chance.
Absolutely. Now you have 2 mantras, I heard you say in one of the Thriller Fest sessions. You have 2 mantras. What are they?
The first one is do it once and do it right. Which is a hangover from TV. You know, live TV, you can't redo anything. And so the idea is to do it without fuss, without drama, just get it done. And the other one is slightly contradictory. It says, don't get it right, get it written. Which is sort of, again, the same thing, that one of the worst enemies for authors is endless procrastination. You know, people that do a first draft, and they see the first draft as only the jumping off point for then the second draft and the third draft and the fourth draft, and then endless revisions, which really becomes a kind of defense mechanism for not sending it out into the world. You want a book to be absolutely perfect, obviously, but it's not going to be. You're never going to get it quite as good as you want it, and when you look back on it, you might cringe a little bit, but you have to accept that a book is who you were that year. The year that you were writing it, that's who you were. The book is a snapshot of you, your life, your concerns at that time. So when you look back at it, you will be a different person by that point, and you will obviously be maybe a little dissatisfied with it. But the point is, you just got to do it and let it go and start the next one.
Does it drive you mad that you do change maybe in the middle of a book?
Well,
yourself?
I say pretty consistent. You know, the 6 months that I'm writing the book, I stay themed, and it's a holistic thing. It comes out just right. But when I look back on them, it's almost like finding your diary, you know, from 10 years ago. That's who you were. That's what was on your mind.
Do you have recurring themes throughout these 12 books?
Yeah, the themes are really loneliness. You know, Reacher is an unattached, uncommitted person who wanders from place to place in that ancient tradition. And so it's about what is the dividing line between solitude, which he enjoys, loneliness, which he doesn't enjoy. You know, what are the eternal values? He's not interested in the baubles of modern life. He doesn't care for a cell phone or email and all that kind of stuff. He just is a rather detached commentator on all of that.
You live in New York City, I think, but originally you're from the UK. What prompted you to come to the US?
Just a lifelong love affair with New York, really, ever since I first saw pictures of it. Plus, you know, in the English DNA, there is a strand of wanderers that, you know, English people have roamed all over the world and settled in the most unlikely places. And, you know, there's certainly tens of thousands of English people in New York.
You now have another novel about to come out, is that true? Or
No, about a year from now it'll come out in June '09.
And can we have the title yet? Or?
Yeah, the title is Gone Tomorrow.
Gone Tomorrow.
Which kind of, you know, is a very Reacher title because he'll be gone tomorrow, he'll be moving on to somewhere else.
And are there more Reacher books in the series, or?
I certainly hope so, yeah. There will be as many as people want to read. You know, this is, in a sense, a service industry. If people are enjoying the books, I will keep supplying them. If they tell me that's enough, then I will stop supplying them.
So you're listening to your audience.
Absolutely. That's what you've got to do.
What advice do you have for writers who are struggling to break into this rather tough business?
Well, if they've got a completed book, I would say just keep on trying. This business is notorious for numerous rejections. You hear household names, if you look back at the beginning of their career, they were often unsuccessful for years and rejected some 10, 20, sometimes 100 times before they make their breakthrough. So keep on showing up. If you've got your book, just keep on showing up, and somebody somewhere will like it, and your career will start.
Many people think that a New York Times best-selling author has no problem at all with rejection or revision. Can you speak to that?
It depends on how sort of fast you've accomplished it. You know, some people are surprise bestsellers right out of the gate, and I think that is much harder. In my case, where it took me 12 books before I got to #1, and you build up the skills along the way to deal with it. We are vulnerable about rejection. That obviously, the downside of being #1 is that lots more people are reading the book, and a proportion of them will not like it, and a proportion of them will certainly write to you and let you know about it. So the positive feeling, of course, is way up, but also that negative minority is also way up, and so you hear more negative stuff, and it is always a little wounding because we're putting ourselves out there. You know, like I said, this is who we are, this is how we feel. It's out there for public consumption, and to receive nasty comments about it is, however tough you are, is, you know, momentarily upsetting.
How do you keep yourself going? What inspires you to keep going?
Well, really the thing now that inspires me is the readers. You know, we have contracts which at first are legal things. You know, your publisher is paying you, so you have to supply some books. And then it kind of graduates to a kind of moral contract with the reader. The reader loves the series, the reader wants the next book, and so my relationship is now a kind of personal relationship between myself and the readers, and I want to give them what they want, and I would hate to let them down.
I think you have not let them down, Lee. Lee Child, thank you very much for being with us today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.